We have tonight a very special program. We have a young man who joined the United States Army and was a guard in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And while he was guarding the prisoners, Allah guided him to Islam, and he is here to share with us his journey to Islam. Please welcome my friend, Mr. Terry Holdbrooks.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. How are y'all doing this evening? I was not expecting to be on the interwebs this evening, but is anybody ever really expecting to end up on the internet? Probably not. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona in July of 1983. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona for nearly all of my life, with the exception of when I was in the military. I enlisted in the United States Army in August of 2002, and it had nothing to do with 9/11. It had nothing to do with towers falling or what Fox was saying on the television. It had nothing to do with patriotism. It had nothing to do with family heritage. Simply college. I wanted college money. That was it. It was a means for college money. It was a means to advance myself. Just because you turn 18, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an adult. It doesn't mean that you were mature. It doesn't mean that you understand the consequences and responsibilities of your actions. I needed to grow up, I needed to mature, and I wanted to be something more than my family had been so far. My mother and father were very young when I was born. My mother was 17 and my father was 18. Being a young home and kind of careless, so to say, you could say that there were some other issues prevalent in my home aside from the young age, perhaps alcoholism and infidelity and perhaps some abuse and some neglect. It wasn't a very good home to raise a child in, and when I was 7, I went to live with my grandparents. My grandparents, being divided upon religion, one being a Catholic and one being a Protestant, didn't tell me that I had to be a Catholic or that I had to be a Protestant. They told me to treat others the way that I would want to be treated, to go out and to learn about others, to ask questions, and to value that knowledge. Above all, value that knowledge. That was precisely what I did throughout middle school, throughout high school. Ended up graduating early, went to a trade school in audio engineering, completed my trade school, still hadn't found faith, still didn't feel like an adult, still didn't feel like I was on the right path yet. Saw a commercial one night, had a nice jingle and said, "Be all that you can be." Whoever thought of that jingle, I hope that guy got a promotion, because I guarantee you thousands of people enlisted over that one slogan. I woke up the next morning after hearing that, and I went to the recruiters, and I was confident that I was going to enter the military that day. I was confident. 9/11 had happened, and we had declared war with Iraq for whatever reason. We hadn't quite figured out where the connection was, and it might just simply be a cue. But you know, Iraq, Al-Qaeda, maybe it's just the cue. We couldn't find the connection, but we were going to war. I was sure they were going to take me. Walked in, I laid down my driver's license, high school diploma, college degree, Social Security, everything. I'm ready to go. I say I want to enlist in the Army, and he smiles, appreciates my enthusiasm, says, "That's okay. We don't need you. Have a good day." And I remember I was a little dumbfounded. I walked outside and I thought to myself, why would this man say no? I can walk and talk, I can see, I can hear, I can smell, I could probably shoot a gun. No, what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? And it was at that point when I lit a cigarette and I was looking in the mirror, I saw my reflection. When I realized, oh yeah, you know, maybe being 18 and covered in tattoos from head to toe and having blue hair and having all these piercings that I have, maybe the recruiter saw me and he saw trouble. You got to remember, for those of you who are young, back in 2002, kids weren't wearing tight pants and buying iPhones like they do today. In 2002, kids were enlisting in the military. That was what all the cool kids were doing. So the recruiter knew he didn't have to take me. He knew if he waited another hour or so, somebody better would come along. Another week went by, I came back to the recruiter, said the same thing. "I want to go to the Army." He says, "That's great. We don't need you." Another week goes by. Third time, I come to the recruiter. "Hey, I want to go to the Army." He asks me, "What would you like to do in today's Army?" Now, as I said, I was born in 1983. I grew up watching G.I. Joe, which used to be a cartoon before Hollywood made it into a bad movie. I said the first thing that came out of my mind when he asked me, "What do you want to do in the Army?" "I want to kill people and get paid for it." That's what you guys do, right? We're going to kill people and you're going to pay me for this? And then I get to go to college and stuff too, right? And he kind of smiled. He appreciated my enthusiasm again, but he said no. It literally took me 4 attempts. Finally, I shave the head, I take out all the piercings, I buy a nice long sleeve shirt, come in and I sit down and we go through all the process again. He allows for me to take my ASVAB. For those of you who've never heard of the ASVAB, it is a government standardized test that allows for the government to figure out how they can best exploit you. If you take it and you're not that bright, maybe they'll put you into the motor pool. If you take it and you score in the median, maybe they'll make you into an interrogator or a military police officer. If you take it and you score very well, they'll make you a doctor, a lawyer. There's 212 careers in the military. I would never tell anybody not to take the opportunity if it came to them. That was the point when I made the mistake of asking that question, what job is giving a bonus? When you say what job is giving a bonus to a recruiter, those are the sweetest words that they can possibly hear. That'd be the same as if some white guy like me came walking in right now and said, hey, I want to be a Muslim. What do I have to do? Half of us would go running towards him, telling him how to say a shahada. We'd be excited about it. For a $2,000 enlistment bonus, I became a military police officer in the United States Army. I had no interest in being a police officer. I've never liked authority figures or cops. When you give somebody a badge and a uniform, bad things happen. And I'm going to tell you about that right now. I enlisted in August of 2002. I was stationed in Fort Leonard Wood in January of 2003. I switched in between units for the first 3 months that I was there. I finally settled down in April, got married in May, found out 2 weeks later, you're going to Guantanamo. Didn't have any time to pack my bags, get my affairs in line. You're going to Guantanamo. That's how the Army works. I've got this new wife. Can I stay home? I need to build this marriage. You're going to Guantanamo. That's how the Army works. Interesting thing about Guantanamo, it only takes 2 weeks for anybody in this room to be trained how to work in Guantanamo. It is a prison, unlike a prison anywhere else in the world, and you can be trained how to work there in 2 weeks. We conducted this training in Fort Dix, New Jersey. I mention that because Fort Dix, New Jersey has a correctional facility, but we didn't train there. We trained in a fake facility that we had made with PVC pipe and plastic wire. We didn't use the manual from Guantanamo because we didn't want that manual to leave the island. If that manual fell into the hand of the security personnel at the airport, maybe into the media's hands, it would have proved that Guantanamo existed. Back in 2002, 2003, nobody knew about Guantanamo. This was still a secret. The individuals training us had not ever been to Guantanamo. They didn't understand the premise, the nature of the work. Anybody in this room seen Jersey Shore? Anybody at home seen Jersey Shore? Can you imagine this? We're training in New Jersey and the Army cannot find any criminals for us to train on. I've seen Jersey Shore. I know New Jersey is loaded with criminals. But nonetheless, half the day I would play the role of the criminal and the other half of the day I would play the role of the military police officer. This was not very adequate training. When it came to teaching us about cultural diversity, when it came to teaching us about who was in Guantanamo, who was there, who were the captives, the Army did a much better job there. Our Army taught us everything that we needed to know about Islam, and they did it in an hour. Here's how. The day we were going to Guantanamo, we boarded our planes. We landed 45 minutes later. I thought to myself, how can we possibly fly from New Jersey to Cuba in 45 minutes? We get off the plane and there's all these tall buildings and it's really smoggy and dirty and people are rude, and turns out we were in New York City of all places. My commander had arranged for us to go to Ground Zero that day. He wanted Ground Zero to be the last piece of the US we saw before we went to Guantanamo. He wanted us to walk around and see all the destruction and the rubble, to see the candles, to see the flowers and the photographs. He wanted us to read the comments and feel what had happened there. This would be the same as taking a Palestinian to the West Bank. This would be the same as taking any Jewish individual to any of the many concentration camps throughout Europe. There's a desired effect here. And as we were getting back to get onto the plane, he gathers us all together and he tells us, I want you to remember what you saw here today. I want you to remember the destruction. I want you to remember the 3,000 innocent Americans we lost here. I want you to remember the war that was created here. We didn't start this war, but we're going to end this war. Remember what Islam did to us. As we started flying down to Guantanamo, I started thinking about my commander's words. I started thinking about the very poor training that we had had. I started thinking about what Fox and CNN had been showing us for the brief amount of time since 9/11 at that point. Who is Al-Qaeda? Who is the Taliban? Who is the Mujahideen? Who is the worst of the worst? In my mind, I'm trying to imagine, who are these people? What do they look like? Or are they little? Are they small? Are they big framed? Are they well built? In my mind, when I think Mujahideen, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, freedom fighters, I think of these big, prolifically well-built men that are all on horses, that have giant beards that make you say MashaAllah, and huge swords. And I'm thinking of Charleston Heston and Anthony Quinn. That's all I know about the Taliban and Al-Qaeda because I'm an American. I got to tell you, when we got to Guantanamo, I was sorely disappointed. There were no horses, there were no giant swords. Guantanamo looked very similar to this room. I had 778 detainees from 46 countries all around the world. And the only unifying aspect amongst all of them was that at some point in their time, they had said, La ilaha illallah. Not that they were Shia, not that they were Sunni, not that they were Salafi or Wahhabi, just La ilaha illallah. Now, as we arrived, when we began our initial tour, and I'm going through all these types of sensories, hearing all these new languages for the first time, seeing a religion that I have never seen, Islam, I've never seen this. I grew up in America. It does not exist. It is not in the educational system. It was a shock. Seeing this for the first time, and almost immediately, the question that came to my mind is, how can you get up and pray in a place like this? We're going to use your head to open doors. We're going to break your feet and your fingers. We're going to rub menstrual blood on your face. We're going to do terrible things to you day after day after day. And these people are getting up and praying. And I couldn't understand this. I was an agnostic at this point, maybe even an atheist at that point. I'm not sure. I might have believed in God. I may have not. Maybe I was resentful. Maybe I was angry towards God. I didn't understand God. And as we start settling into our role, I would say it was maybe 2-3 months, 75% of my unit became full-fledged alcoholics, myself included. Nobody wakes up and wants to torture people. Nobody wakes up and wants to abuse people. You think of the worst person that you've known in your life, I guarantee you they don't wake up and want to torture and abuse another human being. It's just not a thought that happens. It's not normal. It's not the way we were created. And as we started settling into our role and doing these acts, this didn't feel right to me. I started thinking to myself, this isn't America. This isn't what we stand for. This isn't freedom. This isn't bravery. This isn't justice. This isn't equality. This is oppression. This is tyranny. This is the exact opposite. This is everything that we're supposed to be fighting. I didn't feel right about it. I started feeling very low. I started thinking about suicide. Started asking my leadership, first my team leader, then my platoon sergeant, all the way up to the captain. Hey, I need to go to the doctor. I need to get out of here. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I didn't sign up to torture and abuse people. Can I go to the doctor? Can I go to mental health? Can I talk to somebody? Please, I'm thinking about suicide. Help me. My commander looks at me and he says, if I let you go to the doctor and talk about your feelings, I've got to let you, and you, and you. The next thing I know, I don't have any soldiers left to do the job. Sorry. Drink a couple beers, drive on. It's a standard Army answer. Drink a couple beers and drive on. As I started observing Islam and I started seeing this great difference between the detainees and the guards, they were happy. They were content. They were waking up and smiling. They were telling jokes to each other. They were teaching each other different languages. They were making use of their time. They were productive. And yet I was waking up and dreading going to work. I only had to be in this place for 8 hours. I had all the freedom in the world. I could come home, smoke a couple packs of cigarettes, drink a couple bottles of vodka, party all night long, do whatever I want. And I was miserable. And finally I had to ask, how can you get up and pray in a place like this? How do you believe that God cares about you? You're in Guantanamo. I mean, do you not get it? You're going to die here. This is it. This is the end. How can you get up in a place like this and pray? The first detainee that I asked this question to, he said it was just Allah testing his deen. I had no idea what deen was. I had no idea what Allah was. I asked another detainee. I didn't have many to ask. There weren't many that spoke English. I asked another detainee, how can you get up and pray in a place like this? He says to me that it's just Allah testing his faith. Faith, I understood that. Okay, faith, Allah. Now I got to figure out who's Allah. I asked another detainee, another detainee, another detainee. Over and over, the same answer. There were people who came before me, generations that came before me. The Ansar, the Sahaba, the companions, they all had it worse. This is just a test. Bring it on. For the detainee to say to the guard, this is just a test, bring it on? I want to know more about this Islam. I got to know more about this Islam. What? I want that. That's comfort. That's security. That's really knowing your place in the world. I want that. I started asking more interesting questions, more in-depth questions. Why do you pray so much? Why do you pray that way? What's that way? What's the significance of that direction? Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in Moses? Do you believe in Isaac and Abraham and all the other the individuals that we hear about in America? I started asking all of these questions, and as I would ask these questions, what I found interesting was that unlike anybody else that I had ever dealt with in my life, the detainees didn't feel that talking about religion was taboo. They didn't feel that I was encroaching upon something private, that we couldn't talk about this. They would simply answer the question and smile. Sunnah, smile. They would simply answer the question and go about their day. They wouldn't tell me that I was kuffar. They wouldn't tell me that I was going to burn in the hellfire. They wouldn't tell me that I should become a Muslim. It would be good for me if only I knew. Wallahi, no. They'd answer the question and go about their day. One specific detainee who I had been having many conversations with said to me one day, "Open my cell door." I looked at him like he was crazy. I don't know if you know where we are, buddy. We're in a prison. I'm not going to open your door. Why? And he tells me that he wants to give me something. I think to myself, what can you possibly have to give me? I mean, you're in a cage. You've got a toothbrush, a toothpaste, some soap. What do you got? He tells me he wants to give me a book, and that if I take this book home and I read it, it'll help me have a better understanding of the world that I am living in, and the world that I grew up in, the world that I'm going to die in, and have better understanding of everything around me, better understanding of my history and my place and my disposition. I couldn't pass this up. One book that's going to tell me all of this? I looked to the right, I didn't see any other guards. I looked to the left, I didn't see any other guards. I opened up the door and he gives me the Quran, and I put it in my back pocket. When we got off of work that day, I ran straight upstairs and I threw it under my bed. I didn't want anybody else to see that I had a Quran. I didn't want anybody to see that I had been given a Quran from a detainee. Probably would have been thrown in a cell with the detainees. As I was going to sleep that night, I started feeling guilty though. I started thinking about the detainees and the way that they behave. They're always reading the Quran. They're always reading it. They're always holding it. They're always touching it. It's important to them. So if I have this man's Quran and I'm not reading it, I'm not doing anything with it, I'm certainly not going to try to take it back to him. What Quran is he going to read when Friday comes? What Quran is he going to read tomorrow? What Quran is he reading right now? I started feeling bad about it. I started feeling guilty. I picked it up and I started reading it. Next day I got off of work, I came home and I read it all night. Next day I was off, I read it all day. I remember when I finished reading the Quran, it's a statement that I still believe and hold true to this day. Never in my life have I read a religious book that makes as much sense as the Quran. From the beginning to the end, it is the clearest, most concise religious text I have ever read. It doesn't contradict itself, it's not confusing, it's not compounding. It's easy, it's lighthearted, it makes you feel better, it's comforting. Deny it. You can't deny it. I wasn't ready to become a Muslim yet. I still hadn't grasped with the concept of accepting that there is a God and that God loves us. I'm looking at the world all around me. I'm looking at the men that I have to torture and abuse. I'm looking at the nature of the war. How does God love us? And this is what's going on. I'm having a hard time struggling it. I'm having a hard time digesting it. And as I'm debating these answers and questions and these sessions with the different detainees that I was talking to, I was also taking other bits of Islam and putting it into practice in my life. At that point, I was drinking every day. I was a horrific drunk. Tried to stop drinking. Next thing I knew, I'm feeling better. Thinking clearly. I can deal with my emotions. I can process my day. I get it. That's why those Muslims don't drink. It's bad for you. At that point in time, I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Try to cut it down to half a pack, get it real low, maybe none. Next thing I knew, I was running faster, I could do more push-ups, do more sit-ups, did it better on my PT test, got a promotion. I get it. That's why those Muslims don't smoke. It's bad for you. Except for those Egyptians. And the Turkish, and the Iraqis. Afghanistan, definitely. That's why those Malaysians don't smoke. I get it. It's bad for you. It's bad. One of the questions I get asked often as a revert is, what was the hardest thing about becoming a Muslim? Was it giving up alcohol? Was it premarital sex? Was it drugs? What is it? The hardest thing for me about becoming a Muslim was saying my shahada for the first time. I don't speak Arabic. It's really difficult. It's a tongue twister. After about 3, maybe 4 months of kind of trying Islam and growing with it and feeling comfortable, I decided that I wanted to embrace Islam. I didn't know how, but I knew that I wanted to become a Muslim. I came walking onto the block, and that specific block that I came walking onto on this specific day, the guard or the detainee who had given me the Quran was working. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, I want to be a Muslim. I've been doing this and that. I've been making these changes in my life and it feels good. I want to be a Muslim. What do I have to do?" He very politely turns and he looks at me and he just says, "No." I thought back to the recruiter. Why no? What's wrong with me? Do I smell? Do I stink? Why do people keep saying no to me? I couldn't stop and argue with him. In Guantanamo, I had to do what I'm doing right now, pacing, walking back and forth. I've got 24 detainees on my left, 24 detainees on my right. I have to make sure nobody's trying to escape from an island. I have to make sure that nobody's trying to build bombs on an island with no supplies. The army has strange ideas about what these men are capable of doing in these cages, so I have to watch all day long. A little after midnight, it's about 12:40, I stop outside of a cell and I tell him I can't accept no as an answer. Why would you give me a Quran? Why would you lead me down this path and then not let me become a Muslim? I asked some of the other detainees, can I be white and be a Muslim? And they said, yes. I said, can I be an American and be a Muslim? They said, yes. I said, what about all my tattoos? My tattoos going to stop me from being a Muslim? They said, you're dumb. No more, khalas. You can be a Muslim, yes. So what's the deal? Why can't I be a Muslim? What's not good enough about me? And he turns and he calmly looks at me and he says, do you realize that there's an American flag on your shoulder? If you become a Muslim, your whole country is going to look at you differently. It says U.S. Army on your chest. The soldiers above you, the soldiers below you, are all going to look at you differently. Everybody you have ever known, your whole life is going to change. When you talk, you speak very foul. This is not the mouth of a Muslim. I can smell what you drank the night before. This is not the character of a Muslim. You have nicotine stains on your fingers. This is not the behavior of a Muslim. Do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Do you really understand what it means to be a Muslim? Any of the parents in the room will certainly know what it's like to deal with a teenager. I was an 18-year-old kid. Yeah. I read the Quran twice, man. I know what I'm getting myself into. Let's do this. How do I become a Muslim? Tell me, what do I have to do? And he asked me for an index card and a pen. And in the middle of the night, in the dark, wearing handcuffs, he transliterates the Shahada for me. And as he's slipping it back through the cell, he tells me, you need to say this and you need to mean it. And then you will be a Muslim. And my jaw almost dropped. I'm like, that's it? That's all I have to do? I just say this, I'm a Muslim? I don't have to take like a special bath or light candles and incense and say some chant? I just say this and I'm a Muslim? It's that simple? Give me that card, man. What's this stuff say? It says that there is no God except for Allah and the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. Yeah. There is no God except for Allah. No, brother. Arabic. That's when I looked at the card and yeah, that's not English. A shadow, Anna? Who's Anna? Dude, we've been talking about Islam for like 3 months now. None of you guys ever mentioned this Anna character. Who's Anna? What? Anna! Anna, shadow, Anna, Wallahi, it was like 17, maybe 18 times. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I knew that I had finally said it right when his face lit up and the detainee next to him, his face lit up. They both started smiling and saying all these statements that ended in Allah, and they were really excited about it. Alhamdulillah, subhanallah. I didn't know. I'd only been a Muslim for 4 seconds. I had no idea what these words meant. At any rate, when I went to home that night and I was going to sleep, I started thinking about my life. Started thinking about my accomplishments, the good things that I had done with myself, the way that I was striving to achieve more than my parents. And it all felt meaningless. Graduating high school early, was meaningless. Going to a trade school, whatever. Getting married. None of this stuff was what I was looking for. None of this stuff was the piece that was missing. None of this stuff provided me with any comfort or any answers. But after I said my Shahada that night when I was going to bed, I had comfort. I had the answers. I knew what I was going to do when I woke up the next day. I want to fast forward about 13 years. I'm going to try to wrap this up very quickly. I left Guantanamo 12, 13 years ago. It's been a while now. Been a Muslim for quite a long time. In the time since I left Guantanamo, we have dropped the population from 778 to give or take about 80. Alhamdulillah, this is a good thing. Many of the people have been able to go home. What we didn't think about was what we were going to do with the individuals from Yemen and Somalia, specifically Yemen and Somalia. We don't know what to do with them. We don't know where to send them. We're afraid to send them home. We're afraid of retaliation. While you've been promised twice by the president that he is going to close Guantanamo, Guantanamo is going nowhere. We have been in Guantanamo since 1903. We signed a perpetual lease, never-ending lease, in 1913. We spend a ridiculously little bit of money for a lot of torture soil. It's never going anywhere. We have expanded the capacity of the number of detainees that we can hold there. We've renovated all of the prisons. We've built 2 new courtrooms, one of them with a closed-circuit television system in Hollywood, Florida. Guantanamo is going nowhere. With the National Defense Authorization Act of 2011, President Barack Obama, as well as the majority of the Department of Defense, Department of Justice, and all of your local police enforcement have the ability to arrest you and detain you without due process and send you to Guantanamo. I can't stand up here and make this stuff up. I can't. I'd be fired, obviously. I'd get arrested. This would be inciting a riot if I were making this up. National Defense Authorization Act, Title 10. Go and look this up. You have to defend the voice in the legal courtroom. The Muslim Legal Fund of America has been looking out for us. They weren't asked to do it, but they have been doing it, and they're doing it very well. I work with this organization because I believe in them. I've seen their success, and I know that they can help people. I know that they can change lives and make things better. When you don't have a legal voice, you do not exist. Anybody who has a phone at home, in the room, anybody who has a phone with Google Maps, please pull it out of your pocket. I encourage you, please, go ahead, pull it out. It's not a trick. Go ahead, if you have a phone with Google Maps, pull it out. For those of you who are at home, pull out your phone if you have Google Maps. Anybody who has their phone out, please do me a favor. Find me the country of Palestine. Not Palestine, Texas. Find me the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people alive right now claiming to be Palestinians. Find me Palestine. On Google Maps, an open library. That's the sound of genocide. That's what happens when you don't have a legal voice. Palestine exists. We know those people are there. It's not a result. You're not going to find it on Google Maps. It doesn't exist. If your neighbors don't know that you are a Muslim, you're only hurting the rest of us. If your coworkers don't know, you're only hurting the rest of us. The fellow students you go to school with don't know. You're only hurting the rest of us. You have the best religion in the world. You have all of the answers. Don't be afraid. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.